Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and today I'm talking with Assaf Adiv. He's the National Director of WAC Ma'an, an independent trade union that organizes truck drivers, construction workers, and teachers, farm workers, and general Arab workers in Israel. Welcome to Workweek, Assaf.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
So you've just returned from a demonstration against this effort by Netanyahu and his political faction to override the judiciary. It's a major political crisis, the biggest one that's happened in Israel before. Some have called it a police coup. What is going on in Israel?
Well, without a doubt, we have a dramatic situation, which yesterday, actually last night, was the peak of the crisis, especially in Tel Aviv, but also in other cities. Tens of thousands, up to 200,000 people, especially young people, went to the street after Netanyahu decided to dismiss the defense minister who opposed the legislation posed by the government. This was like a provocation. This was signified the responsibility and the adventurous character of this government. Not that the defense minister is an ex-general, he's a rightist, but this dismissal was really just a personification of the absolute disdain and contempt of Netanyahu and his government to any legal process, to any democratic procedures, the courts. Today, this morning, there was a press conference by all the leaders of the Israeli economy, banks, hospital managers, and the Histadrut, the major trade union, that refused to take, until today, after 3 months, they refused to take a position on the government. Today they all sat together and decided to stop everything in the country. So we effectively, from the second they announced it at 10 o'clock a.m. this morning, everything was just stopped, including the airport. So it was really some kind of show of force of major parts of the Israeli economy, society against the government, and Netanyahu had no choice. He had to give up, and he just less than an hour ago, half an hour ago, he made a press conference and said he's going to stop the legislation. Well, this is just sort of what we call the hudna in our area. Hudna is the stop of the shooting in the war. It's not even a ceasefire, and it's absolutely not peace. We are at war, internal war, and it's important to understand that this is really a crisis inside Israeli society that is unprecedented, as you mentioned, Steve.
And for the Palestinian workers, your union has been fighting, representing them. The Histadrut, in their press conference, said that this is the first time that they've had unity with the employers. Is that true, that the Histadrut, and what is the Histadrut? Does it represent Palestinian workers in Israel?
Well, I want to say one more thing about the protest movement against the government and the rightist, sort of semi-fascist, very similar to Trump. We're talking about people in the U.S. or listeners in the U.S., so a government that is really went crazy, that lost any contact with life, that is speaking fake news all the time, that is just promoting ideas that are really out of any kind of relation to reality. This is the kind of government we have in a situation where, the U.S. is a very strong country that was established more than 200 years ago. Israel is a relatively small country, divided completely between Israelis and Palestinians. It controls the West Bank and Gaza and Jerusalem militarily with repression and occupation forces. It is a very, very sort of sensitive situation, and in this situation, that people like Ben Gvir, fascist police minister, and Smotrich, the finance minister, and also part partly defense minister. These people, extremists, adventurists, are major or important part of the government. So the opposition to this government that was sort of concentrated for the last 3 months on the question of the legal reform that actually aims to demolish or to completely dismiss all the judicial, attorney general, there actually no any kind of intervention by legal people in the process, in the government. The government is able to do whatever it wants. Nobody will stop it. This is the aim of the reform. So the reform, it's a sort of legal coup. Is a lot more important, or let's say the significance of this movement, which is a movement of the Israeli Jewish section of the society, but it is actually going very deep against this kind of racist and Jews-only government that is typical to what Israel was. But it reached its climax with this kind of government, and this opposition, this very strong opposition, opens the way for a discussion, possibilities for defending and promoting equality between Israelis and Palestinians. And this is what we are fighting. I'm working in the framework of this union that called Ma'an, that Steve mentioned in the beginning, and I'm also a member of a political movement called Da'am, of Palestinians and Israelis who fight for one state, democratic state for Israelis and Palestinians. And we believe that if until now it was very difficult for us to raise these ideas, these are relevant ideas to our crisis. Now, the Histadrut, to answer your question, the Histadrut has no any orientation toward Palestinian people, Palestinian workers, the Palestinian question. It is completely geared and sort of accepts the general trend of traditional Israeli policies that says that Palestinians are the enemy. They don't see Palestine and Palestinians as part of this community. We are in a country where Israelis and Palestinians live together, and we must find a way to live together.
And the AFL-CIO in the United States has a long relationship with the Histadrut. Randy Weingarten of the AFT has gone and visited them. Why is the AFL-CIO supporting the Histadrut, and do you think the Histadrut is a legitimate representative of the working class of Israel?
Well, by the way, Randy Weingarten and Steve Applebaum wrote an op-ed in Haaretz a month ago, criticizing the Histadrut for not taking a position against Netanyahu and his rightist government. And this was really a very good article. So I think there's a lot of people, a lot of supporters of Israel in the U.S., including in the Democratic Party, including in the Jewish community in the U.S., that traditionally were for Israel no matter what. And there is I would say that this situation of today, this kind of alliance of Benjamin Netanyahu, which is supposedly a politician, very sort of experienced politician, his alliance with fascist, openly fascist forces, and the way that he gave them a very important post in the government is something that even supporters of Israel cannot swallow. And this is a very important situation. I think there is some declarations by members of the U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate said the alliance between U.S. and Israel is not unconditional. If Israel goes the way that Hungary and Turkey and Russia went to, the U.S. would not support Israel. And this is, I think, it's a threshold. It's a point, very important point. I don't think the Histadrut is. They took a very important position today. I don't want to underestimate it, but they took it as a part of their alliance with the Israeli business community. It was not a workers' strike. It was a strike of the whole system of the economic institution in Israel. Politically speaking, I think they represent a very, very sort of center force in Israel. We need something democratic, trade unions, democratic movement that allows for Palestinians to be part of the scene, leadership part of the scene, not just supporters, but to lead the scene, to be part of one democratic movement of Israelis and Palestinians, and the Histadrut is very far away from it.
And the AFL-CIO as well is pro-capitalist. In fact, they're pro-imperialist. They support U.S. military operations around the world. There are 800 bases. But the rise of fascism in Israel, it's an international development. The fascist movement is growing around the world. One of the plans of the Israeli government, Netanyahu government, was the annexation of the West Bank. There is some have said that without democracy for the Palestinians, there will be no democracy for Jews. And you have said you support the one state. How is this new situation now going to raise this question of equality for all and the whole role, basically a state for Jews, but not for Palestinians?
Well, I think that the whole contradiction in this phrase of a Jewish and democratic state, and this is the characterization of the state of Israel, is a Jewish and democratic state. This is a contradiction. You cannot have a democratic state which is Jewish while you have a very important section of the population which is Arab. On the spot, it puts those who are not Jewish into a second-class citizens. And if you want a democracy, it should be a democracy for the citizens of the country. And this contradiction was latent, was not didn't come up to fruition. And now, when you have a government that actually says, we don't want democracy, we want Jewish country, Jewish state, Arabs have nothing here. This brings up to everybody the question, what is your position? Are you for democracy or are you for a Jewish country? And what you see, and this is very significant, you see many people saying, if a Jewish state means fascist state, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to serve in the army of fascist state, even if it's Jewish, I am Jewish, but I am not going to serve a fascist Jewish state. And this is very important. This is a change or a question that has not been discussed before. And people are saying, liberals in Tel Aviv, these people who are demonstrating today, 200, 300,000 every Saturday, going out to the street, most of them never went to demonstrations. It's not old leftists. It's young people, also old people, but people who were sort of passive, sort of indifferent. They were not for the occupation, but they will not go out to demonstrate in the street for Palestinians. They are for the first time moving out and saying, we don't want to live in a country that is not democratic. Well, there is a big question of what is a future constitution of the state of Israel-Palestine or Palestine-Israel or a new name, will look like. But for sure, it will have to be a new constitution, a new concept of how Israelis and Palestinians live together.